Well, blessings, everybody, and welcome back to Luke Part 2. This is the second lesson, the second video. We're looking at the first part of Luke 19, first 28 verses. So take a moment to refresh your memory, read through. It's always good to have these accounts in our mind. What we see here is that Jesus is in Jericho now. He's on his way to Jerusalem. Don't forget that. He'd set his face toward Jerusalem. He's going there. He knew what was going to be happening to him. He's told his disciples repeatedly. Well, there's quite a crowd around him, you can imagine. And there was a chief tax collector, not just your basic tax collector, but one higher up among them, named Zacchaeus, who wanted to see who this Jesus was. He wanted to know more about him. Well, he couldn't see him. And you know the little kid's song, he was a wee little man. He was a short man. So he climbed up in a tree. Jesus looks up and tells Zacchaeus, come on down, because I must come to your house today. Zacchaeus wanted to see who Jesus was. When Jesus looked up, he saw Zacchaeus. He knew who he was, and he called him by name. Zacchaeus comes down from the house, and you know the story. You read it. He's ecstatic about it, and he started telling Jesus, this is what I'm going to do. If I have taken anything from anybody, I'm going to restore it. And you read some cross-references in the law. The law required that if you had taken something deceptively and dishonestly from somebody, that you had to repay that. So let's say you took $1 from somebody. You would repay that dollar plus 20% more, $1.20. What Zacchaeus did, he said, I'm going to repay that dollar and then 4 times more. And so instead of repaying the dollar, I'm going to give them $5 back. Instead of giving them 20%, what I took will be viewed as 20%, is a 20% in relationship to what I'm going to restore. Jesus looks at him and says, truly salvation has come to the house today. That's the reason that Jesus said, I must come to your house. Little did Zacchaeus know that salvation was truly coming to his house. It's not that Zacchaeus did this to buy the salvation. No, his deeds proved what had happened to him, the transformation that took place. You see a key verse here, that Jesus came to seek and save sinners. That's really the foundation of what we see within the Gospel of Luke. Well, going through the account here, we see that Jesus tells another parable. It tells us why. It's because that they thought that the kingdom was coming. And its question is, well, who's they? Well, it's likely the disciples that were traveling with Jesus, other people that were with him, the apostles, the disciples, other disciples that were learners, other people gathered around. And they were really anticipating that when they arrived at Jerusalem, the kingdom would come, because Jesus says, I must go. And he's preaching the kingdom. But he'd been telling his apostles, the 12 all along, I'm going to die. So he tells this parable, and it's the parable of the nobleman. And the nobleman went to a country to receive a kingdom. The nobleman is a picture of the Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, it's a picture of him. He had 10 slaves. He gave the slaves minas. You know the account. When he comes back, he inquires of 3 of the people. One of them he commended for the faithfulness. 2 of them he placed in charge of cities. But then he looked at another one, and he said, take what he has right here and give to the one that has everything. And you say, well, why did he do that? It's not fair. Well, here's what I think the picture is. We had quite a discussion over this, and there's debate over, who the slaves are. Some people say, oh, it's us as a church. I don't think so, because what's being said right here, that the enemies will be slain in the nobleman's presence. I think the slaves represents mankind. Okay, it's a picture of mankind. And that we all have an opportunity in life. And there's things that God has called us to do. He desires for all to be saved. Okay, he seeks all. And so what's being said right here is, what are you doing with your life? Then lastly, we did a lot of cross-references in relationship to rewards. That's a great little study right there that you might say for a Sunday school class or something. And what did you learn about rewards? That there'll be a repayment according to what is done, that hypocrites have their reward now, that the blessed are rewarded greatly in heaven, that you can lose and you can also not receive a reward, and that saw the example that the good works remain, that you'll be rewarded, and that all believers will appear before the judgment seat of Christ to be recompensed. Some great truths here. Keep them in your mind. Keep meditating upon them. I'll see you again next time.